What's going on, guys? It's Kyle from Velocity Film Lab. I am one of the staff photographers here at the Film Lab, and in this video we're going to be going over two of my personal favorite film cameras for portraits. My portrait style is definitely much of a lifestyle, kind of candid type of portrait photography. I like to keep things very natural if I can, which is, usually including natural light, very natural posing, almost like if I wasn't there and these portraits were just of these people living their day-to-day lives for the most part. I like to keep things, and most of my portraits in general, very fluid and organic. For these portraits, I normally bring 1 to 2 medium format cameras. Occasionally I'll bring a 35mm if I'm trying to just get some quick shots here and there. But for the most part, I do all of these on medium format. And that's kind of why I decided to create this video, was to kind of show the two cameras that I generally will bring to shoots. A big reason why I end up shooting medium format and started shooting medium format was obviously just due to the quality of the negatives, the depth of field, the high resolution that comes with a medium format negative. Most of the time for my first camera, my A cam, I will always end up shooting 6x7. And then for my B cam, my second medium format camera, it will either be 6x6 or 645. Usually I'll like to shoot 645 just to keep the aspect ratios pretty similar together. Another reason why I ended up making this video is because I just happened to do a portrait shoot a couple weeks ago where I shot both 6x7 and 645. So I have clips from both and example images. That way you can kind of compare images from both formats from the same shoot. All right, finally we can get into the two cameras that I'm going to be going into for this video, and those two cameras are the Pentax 6x7 and the Fuji GA645. Also, this video isn't going to be a pros and cons video or like a comparison video. It's much more just my personal opinion on using these two cameras and what I like about them and how they fit my personal workflow the best compared to other cameras. I've shot with plenty of other medium format cameras from the Hasselblad, which you've probably seen on this channel already. I've used the RZ67 or the RB67. I've used plenty of other medium format cameras, and these are kind of the two that I'm using right now. That doesn't mean I'm not going to try other cameras here in the future, or even commit to another camera for a stylistic or more unique shoot. But these two cameras for my personal portrait shooting right now happen to work the best. All right, guys, so the first camera that we're going to be going into in depth a little bit, I guess, is the Pentax 6x7 medium format camera. Just an awesome camera all around. I've had this one for around 4 years, and it's a camera that I just cannot force myself to get rid of or even try and get rid of, just because of how much I actually use this camera and enjoy using this camera. But as I said before, it's a 6x7 medium format camera. It shoots 10 frames, which is pretty normal for 6x7. So, besides that, I'm just gonna go into some of the qualities that I really enjoy about this camera in particular. All right, the first quality that I really enjoy about this camera is its operation. It is very intuitive to use. It's pretty much built kind of like a massive 35mm SLR. So if you've ever used a 35mm SLR like a Nikon F3 or Canon AE1, it's got a very similar ergonomics and feel to one of those cameras. It also has a eye level finder that comes pretty much native with the Pentax 6.7. So transitioning from 35mm to medium format was super smooth, and I really didn't have any issues with that transition. Having the eye level finder also makes it super easy to compose from different angles and give me a lot of versatility when it comes to shooting, compared to like a waist level finder where I'm kind of always shooting from underneath. So yeah, having an eye level finder is awesome. All right, another thing I like about the Pentax 6.7 is that it has a great selection of lenses at hand. The lens that everyone normally talks about is this one, which is the kind of 105 2.4, which is the lens that a lot of people who shoot the Pentax 6.7 use for portraits. I've used it a lot for weddings. I've used it a lot for solo portraits, and it really is good. Creates like this crazy depth of field look because it goes down to 2.4 aperture, which is very fast for medium format. And it creates this kind of like large format look, which a lot of people are interested in and appeals to portraits specifically. The other lens that I use a lot, and this is the one I use for pretty much all of my portraits indoors, is the 55mm 3.5. That is also a great lens. The 55mm is almost like a 24mm aspect ratio. So, you get a super wide focal length, and then it also goes down to 3.5, which is also super fast for medium format. Most wide angle lenses for 6x7 really stop at like 4.5 or f4 even. So having that extra stop of light gives me a little more versatility when shooting inside, especially in lower light conditions. So this is the third thing that I am listing about the Pentax, is that the shutter speed will go up to 1/1000th of a second, which is super cool. You can see here, goes up to 1/1000th. I don't know if you can see that, but that is super nice for portraits, especially in daylight conditions when you're shooting outside. And you can, you want to shoot more wide open. You have the ability to have a higher shutter speed, especially for daylight. And you can kind of leave your camera a little more wide open than you can for other cameras like the RB, which has 1/400th of a second shutter speed. So yeah, this camera also gives you a little more versatility in shutter speeds. All right, this is kind of like my final pro for this camera. And this is all, a personal opinion, especially this last one, is the Pentax doesn't have a dark slide you have to worry about, which is super nice. Most of my shoots never involve me having to have film backs preloaded or film backs with different film stocks. Most of the time I'm just shooting the same film for every shoot for the most part. So I don't have to worry about film backs, which is super nice. That just makes it easier for me because I don't have to worry about losing the dark slide, forgetting to take it out before a shot, forgetting where I put it. It just makes my life a lot easier in the sense that I don't have to worry about it at all. Just makes my workflow a lot quicker and more efficient. All right, so those are kind of my reasons why I end up shooting with this camera so much. Just especially for me, I'm so used to the shooting experience and the ergonomics of this camera that for portraits, to me, it is just a little bit more efficient to use than some other cameras. Obviously, the lens selection and all the other benefits I mentioned earlier are important, but at the end of the day, the build quality and the ergonomics of this camera makes it hard for me to pick a different camera over this one, especially as my main camera. But yeah, so that's kind of that on the Pentax 6x7. All right, so now we're gonna move on to the second camera, and this is kind of like my B cam or secondary camera, and that is this one. That is the Fuji GA645 medium format camera. So this is a 6x45 medium format camera, almost like a huge point and shoot. So, if you took like your 35mm point and shoot and took all its features but made it medium format, that's kind of what this camera is. So this camera has a 60mm f4 lens, and 60mm is equivalent to like a 35mm on full frame. But yeah, so this camera is one of my favorites. I've had it, I sold it, I bought a new one, I think I sold that, so I just ended up getting this one back. And this is actually one of the older ones. They have multiple versions of this. They have the wide version, which is like a 28mm equivalent lens, and then they also have a zoom version, which is the one I originally had, and then I ended up getting this one with the fixed lens. So I'm gonna go into a couple reasons why I decided to use this a lot as my secondary camera. Okay, so the first reason why I really like this camera is that it has a leaf shutter. So that means when I'm shooting indoors, the shutter is super quiet and kind of not very intrusive, I guess you could call it. Like compared to the Pentax that has a huge mirror slap and a shutter curtain, it creates a lot of camera shake. So the leaf shutter, which is a shutter that's built into the lens, you don't get the mirror shake. So you can get really good handheld photos at low shutter speeds. So a lot of times I won't even use this on a tripod. I'll shoot this at I'll shoot this at probably like 15th of a second handheld sometimes, just because the camera build is so light and everything. I don't have to worry about a whole lot of camera shake, especially with this leaf shutter, which is obviously a super nice, convenient thing to have for medium format. The next thing I like about this camera is honestly just the size. I mean, this camera is probably, one of the smallest medium format cameras you can find, especially for 645. 645 already is pretty small, but if you get a 645 SLR, it's going to be bigger than this. This is pretty much the size of like a Nikon F4 or any of the bigger SLRs that are more electric, like the EOS 1V, maybe something with a battery grip. But this small size comes in handy so much when I want to get different angles or I don't have room for a tripod. It is just nice to be able to pull this out and take photos kind of wherever I want to without having to worry about just the camera in general being in the way. A third reason about this camera that I really enjoy when shooting portraits is that it has a built-in, let me see if I can turn it on here. It has a built-in flash at the top, like right here, which is super nice. It's technically like an auto flash, so it's not a TTL flash, but it's an auto flash, so anything within like a certain distance at a certain aperture will be properly exposed. And then it also has a hot shoe at the very top of the camera, which is super nice if you want to attach like a strobe or off-camera flash. You have that ability. Unlike the Pentax or some of the older cameras that don't have a hot shoe, you would need a PC sync cable, where this you can directly attach like a flash, which is super nice, especially if you want to get fill flash or get that flash like I was saying indoors, and just nice to have in general. Probably the biggest selling point on this camera is that, like I said, it's almost like a medium format point and shoot, so you get a lot of automatic features. This camera has full program mode, which means it'll pick out your aperture and shutter speed, and then it also has aperture priority as well as manual mode in case you wanted to dial in your own settings. This camera has a really nice center weighted meter, so your exposure should always be really well exposed for the most part. And how I shoot it for the most part is aperture priority, so I'll leave it on aperture priority, pick my aperture, and then it'll automatically pick the shutter speed that it thinks is best for the environment, which is super nice and convenient. With the Pentax, normally I'm gonna have to meter separately and then dial in my settings, but with this I can just kind of hold it, you know, focus it, and then take a photo. So it's super easy to use and convenient to operate, especially as a B camera. I just need to get a few photos real quick. All right, final feature about this camera. As I said before, it's a 645, so you're going to get 15 photos out of this camera, which is super nice. For 645, you know, that's kind of normal, but even with some of the other models of this camera, you can even get 16 photos, which is super cool. Having the option for more photos, especially on film, gives me a lot of different options for creativity if I want to try something new or try something different that I wouldn't normally waste a frame on my A cam, my 6x7 cam. I can try it on this and not be too worried about wasting frames. And honestly, this camera, I've been able to get some of my favorite photos of the day with it just because I'm able to take more photos with it instead of the 6x7 camera. So yeah, that's a huge plus of this camera. All right, so those are my thoughts on my two favorite portrait cameras, especially for film photography. And let me know down below if you've ever shot with these two cameras before. I know a lot of people have tried the Pentax, but I don't know how many people have tried the Fuji. They're very different cameras, and they both have very different features and can be used for different things, which is why they're so nice, I think, for portraits, as you get a lot of versatility with both of these cameras. Also, let me know down in the comments if you guys are interested in seeing more of these kind of like educational type videos and my thoughts on shooting film, whether that be different cameras, different film stocks. Go ahead in the comments and, you know, give me your thoughts about what you guys think on these types of talking head videos. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you guys next video.